The blizzard didn't just bury the roads, it buried hope. In that frozen white hell, an elderly couple clung to each other, blue-lipped and forgotten. Cars sped past. No one stopped. But then a bark cut through the storm. And everything changed. Thomas and Eleanor had nowhere left to go. Their thin coats offered no shield against the biting wind, and their soaked shoes had long since turned to ice molds around their feet. At 82 and 79, their bodies weren't built for this kind of cold. They huddled beside a rusted shopping cart, their entire life packed inside, a chipped teapot, a faded photo, a threadbare blanket. Thomas wrapped his trembling arms around Eleanor, trying to share what little warmth he had left. "Just hold on, Ellie," he whispered, though his own voice cracked like dry wood. Every breath burned. Every blink felt heavy. They'd waved at passing cars for hours, but headlights only flashed briefly before vanishing into the storm. One truck slowed. Eleanor's heart leapt, but it kept going, tires skidding away without a second thought. Thomas leaned harder on his cane, legs buckling under the weight of exhaustion and despair. "We won't make it much longer," he admitted, eyes wet with more than snow. Still, he held her tighter, as if love alone could melt the frost forming on her eyelashes. The cold wasn't just stealing their heat, it was stealing time itself, second by agonizing second. Out there, in that merciless white void, the world had already moved on. Families tucked under quilts, heaters humming, hot cocoa steaming on coffee tables. No one imagined two souls freezing just miles away. The highways stretched empty, indifferent. Even the streetlights seemed to dim, as if turning away in shame. Eleanor raised a frail hand toward another set of approaching headlights, her voice barely a whisper above the gale. "Please help us." The car slowed, brake lights glowing red like a flicker of mercy, then accelerated, swallowed by snow. She lowered her arm slowly, tears freezing on her cheeks. "Maybe no one sees us anymore," she murmured. Thomas didn't answer. He couldn't. His jaw was clenched against the pain, his body shaking not just from cold, but from the crushing weight of being invisible. Snow piled on their shoulders like a shroud. They didn't know it yet, but someone was coming. Someone who saw them when no one else would. Someone whose loyalty ran deeper than human hesitation. Deep in the woods, Ethan Walker tightened the last window latch as the storm screamed against his cabin walls. A former Marine, he'd chosen solitude after years of chaos, finding peace in silence and snow-covered pines. His German shepherd, Shadow, sat rigid by the door, ears pricked, tail stiff, eyes locked ahead. "What is it, boy?" Ethan asked, frowning. The dog didn't whine or pace. He just stared, muscles coiled like springs. Then, suddenly, he barked, sharp and urgent, pawing at the wood with desperate intensity. Ethan knew that look. Shadow never lied. Without hesitation, he grabbed his thickest coat and gloves. "All right, let's go." The moment the door opened, Shadow bolted into the blinding storm, a dark streak vanishing into white. Ethan followed, snow slamming into his face like shards of glass. He trusted his K9 partner with his life, and tonight, that trust would lead him straight into a miracle. The wind stole his breath, the cold bit through layers of wool and denim, but Shadow's distant barks pulled him forward like a lifeline through the white fog. Shadow tore through the drifts, guided by something beyond sight, instinct, empathy, maybe even fate. Ethan fought to keep up, boots sinking knee-deep, lungs burning with every gasp. The wind howled like a wounded animal, branches snapping overhead. Just when doubt crept in, Shadow's barking grew louder, frantic. Ethan pushed forward, and there they were, two figures half buried in snow, motionless except for the faintest rise of a chest. He dropped beside them. An elderly woman lay unconscious, lips tinged blue, skin icy. A frail man knelt beside her, barely holding himself upright. "My God," Ethan breathed. He scooped the woman into his arms, shocked by how light she was, as if the storm had already stolen half her soul. "Stay with me, ma'am," he urged, shielding her face from the wind. Shadow pressed against the old man, nudging him gently, guiding him forward with quiet strength. "Ellie, is she alive?" the man choked out. "She's breathing," Ethan shouted over the gale. "But we move now." Step by agonizing step, they battled the blizzard home, Shadow leading like a living compass through the white chaos. Snow rose waist-high in places. Fallen branches blocked their path. Once, Thomas stumbled, nearly collapsing, but Shadow braced beneath him, steady as stone. "Shadow, find the way," Ethan yelled, voice raw. The dog barked once and surged ahead, disappearing momentarily before reappearing like a beacon carved from the storm itself. Inside the cabin, warmth rushed over them like a blessing. Ethan laid Eleanor on the couch near the crackling fire, wrapping her in thick wool blankets. Shadow stayed close, lying beside her, radiating heat like a guardian angel. Thomas collapsed into a chair, shaking violently, eyes never leaving his wife. Minutes passed in tense silence, until Eleanor's eyelids fluttered open. She gasped softly, drawing her first full breath in hours. Thomas broke into tears. "Thank God. Thank God." As color slowly returned to her cheeks, Thomas confessed in a voice thick with shame. They'd lost their home after medical bills devoured everything. For months, they'd lived out of that cart, too proud to ask for help. "We didn't want to burden anyone," Eleanor whispered, squeezing his hand. Ethan's jaw tightened. No one should face death alone in a storm. But before he could respond, Shadow stiffened, ears forward, a low growl rumbling in his chest. He stepped between the couple and the door, tail rigid. Something was out there. Not the wind. Movement. Shadows circling the cabin. Starving wolves, driven down from the mountains by the blizzard, desperate and dangerous. One slammed against the wall, a thud that shook snow from the rafters. Eleanor flinched. Thomas gripped the chair arms, fear flooding back. Ethan grabbed his rifle from above the hearth. "Stay back," he ordered quietly. He cracked the door just enough to fire a warning shot into the night. The blast echoed across the trees. Most wolves scattered, but one lingered, eyes gleaming in the dark. Shadow lunged past Ethan, colliding with the beast mid-charge. They tumbled into the snow, snarling. Then the wolf retreated. Ethan slammed the door shut, bracing it with a wooden beam. "They're hungry," he said, breath still ragged. "They'll be back." But Shadow stood guard, ready to fight the storm itself if he had to. Morning light finally spilled through the frosted windows, soft and golden. The wolves were gone. The storm had passed. Ethan opened the door cautiously, scanning the tree line. Shadow stood beside him, calm now, his duty done. Inside, Eleanor sipped warm tea, her hands steady for the first time in days. Thomas looked at Ethan, tears welling again. But these were different. "You and your dog, you saved our lives," he said, voice trembling with gratitude. Ethan shook his head. "Shadow saved you. I just followed him." The German shepherd trotted over, resting his head gently on Thomas's knee. The old man smiled, a real smile, the kind that hadn't crossed his face in months. By afternoon, emergency services arrived. Stunned couple had survived the night at all. Within hours, plans were made. Shelter, medical care, a real bed, hot meals. Social workers spoke of housing programs, meal deliveries, dignity restored. As they were helped into the waiting vehicle, Eleanor turned back. "You gave us more than shelter," she said softly. "You gave us hope." And for the first time in years, the cabin didn't feel lonely. It felt warm, filled with the quiet echo of courage and compassion that refused to let two souls vanish into the snow. If this story moved you, please hit like, subscribe, and share. And tell me, where are you watching from? Drop your country below. Stories like this remind us, kindness can break through even the coldest storms.